Most triathletes, most people that ride their bikes, when winter looms, they go inside and they sit on the trainer. And that's normal. But unfortunately, the vast majority of riders out there absolutely underutilize the opportunity. They tend to look at training on the indoor trainer as just a time efficient workout. So it's time on the saddle where they're driving to boost their metrics, their FTP, or the elements that make up critical power. And they do intervals that are really hard. And typically they execute it while they're either watching some gamification type platform or they've got a Netflix show or something like that. And they're just chasing avatars or watching crime dramas or something like that. But the truth is that they're missing a huge opportunity. If you know how to take advantage of the indoor trainer, you can get so much more out of it than just priming your physiology. And so the goal of the show today is to help you turbocharge your indoor riding in a way that actually delivers real world performance benefits. So using the indoor trainer so that you get better with your outdoor riding. And that's a critically important component. Another message that is going to be woven into this is that no matter what your riding environment, the truth is that simply focusing on physiological metrics such as your functional threshold or just your straight power meters is a surefire pathway for underperformance on your bike. And so if you want to get faster, if you want to actually get more of a yield from your strength and fitness, and then we want you to go beyond the power, which is just a measure of output, how much work you're putting in and what you're able to generate. And so you need to go beyond the watts if you want to do that. And we want to think about becoming more efficient and more strategic about how you use your energy to ultimately give you what we're going for, which is more wheel speed. And so, yes, indoor trainers are highly valuable tools. They can improve your riding performance. They also bring improvements in safety and other components like that. But by approaching your indoor trainer as a tool to upgrade your outside riding, it changes your whole mindset. I don't want your indoor trainer to just be a convenience tool. I want it to be something that actually helps you become a better bike rider. And so before we get in, I think that we should take a step back and say, well, that all sounds very romantic. That sounds like a wonderful investment. I should just do all my riding indoors if it helps me get better outdoors. But let's first highlight on some of the limitations of riding your trainer indoors, because it's not a solve all situation here. Alrighty. We have a lot of people that only ride their bikes indoors and then they go outside and they race outside. And that is going to be a limiting prospect. And I understand and appreciate why it's tempting to always ride your bike indoors. There's no impact of traffic. It's very, very convenient. It's a time efficient tool of training. And so I am all in on the bike trainer. But if you ride your bike trainer only, you are going to severely limit your riding potential as well. So I'm speaking out of two sides of my mouth here. Use the bike trainer to improve your outdoor riding. But if you only ride it indoors, you're going to limit your riding potential at the same time. And we need to acknowledge that there are things that you just simply can't really develop and improve on a bike trainer. And so let's go through some of those first, because I think it's important. The first is the bike trainer fosters an environment where you don't need to have situational awareness. So you don't need to have 360-degree understanding. There is a reason as you become a better bike rider and the actual action of stabilizing and balancing the bike, shifting gears, managing terrain, a lot of the stuff that we work today, as that slides into the unconscious or the subconscious, then you have more capacity to understand the environment around you. The challenge is if you never ride in the environment, you're never going to improve that component. And that can become actually more dangerous. There is a reason that the less experienced outdoor riders are the folks that tend to ride through the glass, that tend to hit the sticks and the potholes, tend to actually have more interactions with traffic. And that's because more seasoned riders have great situational awareness. So if you never get to that environment, you're never going to improve that component. So there is a safety component to actually riding outside a little bit. and you should consider that. There's also many of the interactions with the machine itself, with the actual handling skills of a bicycle that you just simply cannot foster and improve on the bike trainer. And so, how and when you're braking, balancing on the bike, managing different environmental factors such as riding in the wind, even riding around corners, standing out of the saddle really effectively. These are things that you can't really develop and inside on the bike trainer. You can do some of the theoretical applications. You can work on standing form, but to become a better bike handler, you have to ride your bike outside. And then a third component that I think is really important that you don't get riding on an indoor trainer, at least most of the bike trainer setups, is many of the stabilizing muscles that actually come into play with outdoor riding. When somebody is on a static indoor trainer, only utilizing the main muscle groups, they're not getting the stabilizing effect that occurs because the bike is always moving outside and you are interacting with the different gravitational forces, the lateral forces of cornering, even keeping the bike stable in the wind, etc. And your core and stabilizing muscles are always engaging. And if you never use those outside, when you actually go outside, particularly if you're doing something like a half Ironman or an Ironman or a big Grand Fondo, you're going to get very, very stiff and tight. And that's going to have an interaction on how you're performing on the back end of the bike ride, or particularly if you're running off the bike. And so don't undervalue the importance of doing some mileage outside for all of these factors. So ultimately, your best solution here for riding performance is to have a combination or a mix of some indoor riding and some outdoor riding, because there are also equally some things that only indoor riding can truly provide. So if we've talked about the negatives, why don't we shift gears and say, okay, the whole theme of today's podcast is weaponizing your indoor bike trainer. That's great. So what are the benefits? Well, I've already mentioned one of them. It is, of course, much, much safer. And that's really great. But when you have the lack of the requirement of situational awareness, that means that you can amplify the specificity because the 100% of your focus can be dedicated to the action of the training. So rather than you thinking about traffic or random stops and starts with stoplights and things like that, inconvenient terrain changes when you don't want them, maybe some inclement weather, you have a highly effective environment to place all of your focus and willpower into the specific intervals that you might be doing. And that's a thumbs up. So you get to have an increased specificity. You also have a safer environment. It's also a highly effective venue for structured workouts, particularly intervals, because you can have a dose and response of very specific timing that isn't necessarily influenced by terrain and wind and other factors. So that's great. And you can also, interestingly, really isolate and dig into some very specific skills that are critical. The indoor bike trainer, with awareness, with focus, with prioritization, is a great venue where you can actually foster and improve things like your posture, how you're actually sitting on the bike, whether that's in your time trial position or your road position, or how you're actually pedaling the bicycle. Yes, there is an art and a science to how you should be pedaling. And it's also a great place where you can learn the tools of the toolbox of how to become a better bike rider, particularly utilizing variance in cadence, that's your leg speed, and your gear selection. And so there are some critical skill developments that you can do inside that then transfer to outside. And that's great. And then finally, the bike trainer is, of course, highly specific and particularly valuable for the time starved athlete. Now, I'm not a massive fan of saying 1 hour on the trainer equals 2 hours outside. I don't believe in that. 1 hour on the trainer is 1 hour on the trainer, and 2 hours of riding outside is 2 hours of riding outside. But it is a particularly potent tool that you can use to get a great ROI on whether you're thinking about skill development, interval training, or anything else. And so when you weigh it up, when you have the combination of some indoor riding to really work on these environments where you can place all of your energy, your focus in the skill development in the specific intervals, that is powerful. But then you want to take the mindset and the skills and the improved posture outside and apply it in the real world, where then you also integrate your situational awareness and your actual application onto the ribbony roads that you're going to go and ride outside. So that's your potency as you go from there. Now, if we go back with indoor trainers, they used to be what you would call dumb trainers. In other words, you would typically take the wheel off the trainer, you would lock it in either side of the axle, it would have a resistance against, and you would shift gears and just simulate riding your bike. And of course, what you get there is a different form of tension on the bike. You just do loads of intervals and it's great. And so that's why you have the origins of things like pain cave, because it's not very fun, it's not very variable, and it doesn't really apply to real world bike riding. But over the last few years, everything has changed. And not everyone in the riding community is up to some of the things that you can do. So we still have, as an opportunity, a wonderful venue to do all sorts of intensity. We can do long and relatively boring endurance work outside. We can do very high intensity short intervals. We can do medium intervals, whatever it might be. So all of the specificity of classic interval training or endurance riding, you can do it inside. And that all exists. But now, with the advent of the smart trainer and some of the new platforms that are in play, you can actually apply real outdoor riding skills and terrain management that can be practiced on the smart trainer. And it's going to improve your power delivery and thus speed through the variance of terrain. And that becomes the greatest yield, because no matter how fit you are, no matter what your genetic gifts are, and all of us are given a certain amount of gifts, size of our engine, muscular strength, endurance, and resilience. So no matter what our genetic gifts are and how much we work to develop over the course of time our fitness, our power output, etc., the biggest yield that you can get for speed is becoming a master of the craft of how to actually take all of your genetic gifts and your hard work and your effort, so therefore your level of fitness that you've actually developed. How do you apply that to grades that are going uphill where gravity is not your friend, crests where gravity is becoming your friend, and downhill grades? Then when the wind is in your face, the wind is at your back, etc. How do you apply that fitness to give huge speed return? And these new platforms actually enable that. And that is incredibly exciting, because that's where the biggest return of investment is. Whenever we see people become craftsmen on their bicycle and they leverage their fitness and power to the best of their ability, that's where they go from good to great, from mediocre to good. In other words, they up level. And that's a really powerful thing. And so it becomes the great opportunity. And it's only been for the last couple of years that this is really a reality. And we're sitting here right now, sitting in front of us with this opportunity to grow, to improve, and to learn on the indoor bike trainer. And it's passing many people by. That's the truth of it. Because we're stuck in an old school mentality of thinking about the bike trainer as just a venue to do intervals. And that's a shame, because you can get a lot faster from just becoming a better craftsman. And then, of course, you layer the intervals on top and you get really fast. And that's where the fun lies. So let's talk about the benefits of indoor training. Well, just as I talked about, it teaches you how to maximize speed relative to your input. And that's a really good component. It also offers controlled conditions for riding posture, pedal stroke, cadence, and gear management. That's a good thing. It provides safe, repeatable feedback to enhance your outdoor skills. So you actually can get a yield of, am I doing it right or wrong, repeatedly over a pattern. And it can actually help match your inner animal, as I like to call it, your intuitive sense of effort relative to a specific output or power. And that's a really good thing. And so it is a high ideal venue to have any sort of specific interval, but also layer on outdoor riding.